Okay, PreCalc. This is this is near the end of our new material for the year. If I can finish this topic in tonight's episode, we will be switching into review mode soon. So matrices are our last new topic for the year. So Mighty 6, you have performed mightily. So let's look if you can continue that pattern by looking at one of the uses for matrices, and that is for encoding messages and decoding them. So let's start with the decode. I'll do part of it and you finish. So let's say here's the message that came across and we need to interpret it. So there is a message that it needs to be decoded. So I'm going to let you know, and not everyone walking down the hall will know this, that we are going to decode this using a special matrix. And everyone has agreed beforehand on what that matrix is. So here is the matrix that we are going to agree upon beforehand so that we can decode and encode our messages. And of course that can change very rapidly. But for now that's going to be our message. Okay, now that's going to be used to decode our message. That is the matrix. So in order to do that, we must, hold on a second, we must also agree beforehand that to decode this we're going to use the inverse of the matrix. So you have been well taught on how to find the inverse of the matrix. So we take the matrix and we set it alongside the matrix with the dripping ones. The ones are along this diagonal and everything else is 0. So we use elementary row operations until this side looks like this. Then this side has changed to now be the inverse. So here's what I did, and you can do it for fun, but I'm not asking you to. I took from this problem right here, beginning row operations. Remember, you can multiply a row by a number and add it to another row, replacing that row. You can exchange rows, or you can multiply a row by a number. So I took row 1 and added to row 2 and replaced row 2. Then I took -1 times row 1 and added it to row 3, replacing row 3. I took the negative of row 2 and just multiplied it by -1 and replaced row 2. I did 2 times row 2 plus row 1, replacing row 1. I took -1 times row 2 plus row 3 and replaced row 3. And I took -1 times row 3. And then I took 5 times row 3 plus row 2, replacing row 2. And 8 times row 3 plus row 1, replacing row 1. So you can use that strategy to get the inverse. But here's what it looked like after doing all those steps. I got the 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. So I got the dripping ones, the ones that go down like that. Then over here I got a -1, -1, 1, -10, -6, -1, -8, -5, -1. So this was A inverse. That's the inverse of matrix A. So the bad guys don't know that we're going to use the inverse to decode this message. And they don't know what matrix, if they did have an idea we were doing that, they don't know what matrix we started with. So it'd be very difficult to break this code, and very easy for us to read the code or use it to decode. So let me show you how to do it. Since we agreed on that matrix and we are going to use the inverse to decode, we're going to take, since this is a 3 by 3, we're going to take these in groups of 3. So I'll do this one, this one, this one, and I'll let these last set here, this one and this one, are for you to do. So watch me do the first 3, and because I'm using a 3 by 3 matrix and I could make it larger, I'm going to divide my code into sets of 3. So now I'm going to take each set. So there's the numbers 3, -26, 21. Let me put that aside. And here's my inverse again. So I'm going to take those numbers that the first 3 in my code, 3, -26, 21, and multiply it times the inverse of my matrix A. So this is 3 rows, 1 column, and this is, I'm sorry, it's not. It's the opposite. It's 1 row, 3 columns. That's what this is. And this one is 3 rows, 3 columns. So we learned if these match, we can multiply, and the result is this size. So that's a 1 by 3. 1 row, 3 columns. So when I multiply that, I'll get 3 very special numbers. So when I did that, I got, let me see if I find my work, 1326, here it is, -26. So I'm going to go, remember this is first row, first column, so we use this row, this column. 13 times -1, -26 times -1, and 21 times 0. So that gives me a 13 for that spot. In like manner, first row, second column, row, column, 13 times -10 plus -26 times -6 plus 21 times -1. So I did all that earlier and I got a 5. So you can check that. And last, we have this spot, so it's going to be this row and this column. 21 times -8 plus 21 times -5 plus 21 times -1. And I did all that and I got another 5. Alright, so let me go ahead and tell you what the 13, 5, and 5 are. So now these correspond to the place in the alphabet. So 13 is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M. So the 13th letter in our alphabet is M, 5th is E, and the 5th is E. So we've got three letters in our message. So let's look at it. So we've got the M-E-E. Alright, so taking the next set of 3, I've got a 33, a -53, and a -12. So I have that set up here. And once again, I'm going to get 3 spots because I have the same size. We'll get the same size. So it's going to be 33 times -1, and then it's going to be -53 times -1, and -12 times 0. So that all give me a 20 in this spot. And we'll come back and figure out what letter in our alphabet that is. When I do this one, I get -53 times -10 plus -12 times oops, sorry, I messed up. So it's this row, this column. 33 times -10 minus 53 times minus 6, negative 12 times negative 1. And all that actually came to 0 when I added and subtracted those values. Negative 12 times negative 8 plus negative 12 times negative 5 plus, I'm messing up, 33 times negative 8, negative 53 times negative 5, and negative 12 times negative 1. When I did all that, it came out to be 13. Alright, so the 20th letter in our alphabet, let's see, M was, the M was 13, so 14, 15, 16, 17, 9, 20. I can do this. Alright, the 20th letter in our alphabet was T. When we get a 0, that's going to be a space, and 13, we already calculated that letter to be M. So, going back to our original problem, we've got a T, and a blank, and an M. Alright, meet so far. Alright, so now we have one more set from me, and you can finish decoding. So to get this one, I'm multiplying this matrix times this inverse matrix. 18 times minus 1 plus minus 23 times minus 1 plus negative 42 times 0. So when I did that, I got a 5. 18 times minus 10, negative 23 times minus 6, minus 42 times minus 1 gave me a 0. And lastly for me, 18 times minus 8 plus minus 23 times minus 5 plus minus 42 times minus 1. So that gave me another 13. So we've got E blank and 13 is another M. So going back, I've got meet, me, blank, and the next part starts with an M. Alright, so I'm going to ask you to finish decoding the message using, I did the hard part, I did getting the inverse matrix. So you just have to set them up and multiply to get the last 6 letters of the message. Alright, let me show you how to go the other way and actually encode a message. To do that, I will encode the first part of this message, which is so far meet blank me blank M. So I'll show you how to get that far. And then when you finish decoding, you can encode the rest. Alright, so to start, we already know that it says meet me blank meet blank me blank M. Here's the matrix that we're using. Beforehand, we've agreed upon that matrix. It's not changed. And we know from our alphabet the corresponding numbers. And let me zero in on that a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to take those in sets of 3. So 13, 5, and 5. Come from the message I want to encode, and since I'm using 3 by 3 matrix, I'm going to use the one that I beforehand agreed upon, and here it was, the regular matrix A. So we're going in this direction. We don't need A inverse, we need A. So I'm going to come up with the 3 spots over here and go ahead and multiply. So I get just a second. Okay, I can't find it. So whatever. I'll just do it again. So I have 13 times 1 is 13 plus 5 times minus 1 plus 5 times plus 1. So I got a 13 for that. And then I am going to get the next part, and that is going to be out of the screen. 13 times minus 2, 5 times 1, and 5 times minus 1. So I got a negative 26. And the last one that's off the screen, 5 times a 2 is 10. 5 times a 3 is 15. And 5 times a minus 4 is a minus 20. So that gets me to a 5. Now, what was that get us to? I don't think I got that one right. Let me check it. 13. I wish I had my work. Hold on. Oh well. One more time. 13 times 2 is 26. I didn't write that. That's where I went wrong, I guess. 13 times 2 is 26. 5 times 3 is 15. And 5 times minus 4 is minus 20. Alright, putting those together, I get a 21. Alright, so you can see that I am generating the actual code that I gave you at the beginning of this class. So you don't have to do that because the answers are right there. So you can see that I got 13, negative 26, and 21. And there they are in our original coded message. So the only thing I'm asking you to do is to decode these last sets of 3. Alright, so you can tell me what the message is and be ready to decode and encode when that is asked of you. Alright, so this is actually one way to use matrices. It's actually very hard to decode a coded message when they use this method. So, not everyone walking down the hall knows that, and we'll keep it on the down low. Till tomorrow, over and out.